Hi everybody, welcome back to the Renaissance of Home Cooking, where our mission is to bring families back to the table one meal at a time. My name is Ray Monito, I'm your host, and today we're going to be making super easy French bread. So to get started, we need our mise en place, or our mess in place, or everything you need to do the job. And what we have here is flour. This is a bread flour. 1 packet of the yeast of your choice. I have coarse kosher salt here. And I use egg white as a brush on the crust just because that's the way I like it, but you don't have to do it that way. And let me talk a little bit about flour. So I've already measured out 3 cups of flour for this recipe in the bowl here. The recipe calls for 4 cups, but that's not 4 cups. That is 520 grams because a cup should be about 130 grams. And let me show you a little something about that. I'm going to pour flour into this bowl here. And I'm going to zero my scale to my cup. There we go. And now, fluff this flour up with a whisk. Just make it nice and light and fluffy. And don't worry about getting a little flour on the countertop because I'm going to be rolling the dough out right on there in just a little while anyway. Fill this cup up. I'm shooting for about 130 grams. 134 grams. Take just a little off, and that's close enough for me. Now, I'm just going to go into this bag and pull out a cup of flour like I would do if I wasn't doing this method, just measuring out a cup of flour. There's a cup. Maybe it's a little heavy. There we go. That looks better. Set it on the scale. 170 grams. That's more than 20% more flour than the recipe calls for. So take the time and fluff up your flour and measure it out, 520 grams for the recipe, and you're good to go. Now onto the yeast. I have a bowl of warm water here. I'm one of those kind of people that likes to proof the yeast. So I just take this pack of yeast and cut it. I believe this is 2 1/4 teaspoons. Might be tablespoons. I don't know, but it's a standard packet and that's all you need. Give it a good stir. Come on, break it up. Okay, give that chance to proof and move on to the next step. Okay, so now that the yeast has been proven to be good, and I like to do that just because I like the yeast to go in woken up and hungry, and ready to meet its new friend, the dough. To this 4 cups of flour, I will add 1 tablespoon of coarse kosher salt. Combine well. And I will add the yeast in its entirety. I know I'll probably use more water than that. And, you know, if I put in too much water, you can always just add a little more flour. That's the beauty of this thing. A little more water. I like to get most of the dough, most of the flour pulling away from the walls of the bowl. About there. Throw down a little flour. And again, if this is a little too dry, I can always put a little bit of more water in, even though it's on the counter. Always fill that bowl with water right away or it turns to cement. And I'm going to be using it later to rise the dough in anyway. Okay. There we go. It's looking pretty good. Start to knead the dough, get the moisture moved throughout. This is actually going to be enough for 2 loaves. Okay, as you knead the dough, actually fold it over like that, and then push it flat. Fold it over and push it flat, just over and over again. Dough is like people. People are like dough. That's right, because we all need to be kneaded, and we all need rest. We're going to give it some rest too in a little while. So I'm going to knead this for about 8 minutes or so. Okay, it's been around 8 minutes. So this was the rest part I was telling you about. Put a little flour down. I like to roll it around in that a little bit. Let it sit there and rest, and while this rests, I'm going to take that bowl. You notice I used a ceramic bowl for this. I like those because I'm going to wash it now, and I'm going to fill it with some nice warm water so that when this goes into the bowl to rise, it's going to have a nice warm environment. Also turn the light on in the oven just to warm it up in there a little bit. So my bowl is washed. It's filled up, sitting behind me right now with some nice warm water in it, and that ceramic bowl will retain that heat. And it'll be great for this bread. So another 4 minutes or so of kneading after the rest. Like I said before, you just fold it over, push down, fold over, push down. And this is great if you happen to be a little pissed off. You can just get this. Of course, I'm never feeling that way. A little flour on the surface here. All right, it's been about 4 minutes or so. And look at that. Isn't that awesome? Just a little bit ago, this was just some flour, 4 cups of flour in a bowl. We added water, salt, yeast, and now we got something awesome. Know what I mean? All right, this is gonna go into the bowl that I just warmed up, and I'll do that. Here is said bowl. I don't bother putting any kind of grease inside here because it always comes out without a problem. And I'll show you that. And put a grocery sack over the top of it, like so. And put that, I put it in an oven with the light on for about an hour. It should double in size. Okay, let's see how this looks now. Yeah, it's easily twice the size, and while that took about an hour, while that was in there rising, I went ahead and did another dozen of my hot sauce pickled eggs. I don't know, I mean, the last dozen I made just went away, so I had to pick out another dozen. And if you think that's cool, you should see my baked potato, garlic rosemary baked potato video at my YouTube channel. You need to subscribe if you think that stuff is cool. Okay, enough with the commercial. Let's roll this out onto a floured surface, like so. I told you I didn't use oil in the bowl because I don't have a problem with it sticking, and that's why. It comes right out. Why use it when you don't need to, right? Okay, I'm going to knead this again. This batch here will knead for around 5 minutes. Okay, it's been about 5 minutes. Like I said earlier, this piece of dough will make 2 loaves of bread. So, bring in my handy dandy scale. We're looking at 870 grams. 870 divided by 2. 435. I guess I could have done that in my head. So I want to cut this into 2. Approximately 435 gram halves. 480. 427. 436. 433. Good enough. Half of this, I guess I'm going to leave that on. Bring some bags over for it because I'm going to freeze half of this since it makes 2 loaves. I need a little more flour on the counter here. I'm going to keep kneading these. Since this makes 2 loaves, I'm only making 1 loaf, and I'm going to take half of this, divide it in 2. About 217 grams per. It's 218, 214, 15. Okay. Just take these, make little balls out of them. I use this dough not just for bread. I've used it for hot dog buns, hamburger buns, rolls, pizza dough. I've used it for flatbread. Lots of uses. I've made tortillas out of it. So I take these 2. 1 is just enough for my wife and I. If I'm going to have other people, I'd use both of them. Drop it in this freezer bag and off to the freezer they go. Just need this a little bit more. See how that pulls back when I flatten it? That's the gluten is all nice and active in there. Okay, so now what I want to do is roll this out to make my loaf. And I find that if I roll it out, it just rises better. I used to have problems with it rising and then kind of just going flat on me. So I wanted to firm it up a little bit. And so I found that if I just roll it out, it's kind of tough to roll through this, all that gluten there. Just wants to fight against me, but doesn't take much. It over and I just sort of pinch down the seam. Now I shape it into the loaf that I'm going to be wanting, about that size. Since it's going to double in size, I want to pretty much guess how I'm going to to guess the size that I want it to be. Then simply take a nice sharp knife. Cut a couple, 2 or 3 slices like that in it. Give it some room to rise. And I take a baking sheet covered with foil and a little bit of non-stick spray. There, position the loaf there, make it look nice. This is I'm going to put back into my oven, which is off. It just has the oven light on for warm. And it'll take another hour for this to rise. So it's been just about an hour. This is certainly twice its size. Looks pretty good. I'm a little concerned it's kind of flat looking, but I think that'll rise up in the oven. Now I just take this is a mixture of egg white, got ice in it just to make it cold. It's egg white and water. And before I bake it, I just give it a quick brush over like this. And then about 10 minutes before it's done, I do it again. It just adds a nice brownness. It browns up nicely, and it also makes the crust a little bit thinner and a little more chewy. Alright, this is going to a 375 degree oven for about 20 minutes or until it's done. Keep an eye on it if you do this, check it after 10 minutes, then 12, 15, and so on until it's done. Okay, so here it is, piping hot from the oven. When I put it in, I left it in for about 15 minutes. I pulled it out, did another egg wash across the top using like I showed earlier with the egg white, water, and ice and a paintbrush essentially. Put it back in, and I gave it about 5 more minutes. It wasn't really browning too good, so I cranked the oven up just a little bit, gave it around 5 or 6 more minutes, and this is what we have right here. And it feels beautiful. Sounds like it's got good crumb. Gonna let it cool off and go ahead and eat some of it, make a sandwich or something. But if you like this, subscribe to my YouTube channel. There's other things, like I mentioned earlier, we got those eggs, we've got potatoes, we got all kinds of fun stuff that you can make for your family. And this was so easy. It just took a couple hours, a little bit of dough, some yeast and water, salt, and here we got a loaf of bread. The kitchen smells like heaven. And believe me, if I can do this, you can do it too. Bon appetit.